Okay, good. Just making sure we're on the same page. I'm about to burn up. Oh, go ahead. Hey, well, I can't do that. All right. I'll put it somewhere else. Um, turn 25 in your hymn book, and we'll sing At the Cross. At the Cross. Alas, and if my Savior bleed, and if my sovereign died, would he devote that sacred head for such a worm as I? At the cross, where I first saw the light, and the burden of my heart rolled away. It was there by faith I received my sight, and now I am happy all the day. Was it for crimes that I have done, he groaned upon the tree? Amazing pity, grace unknown, and love beyond degree. At the cross, where I first saw the light, and the burden of my heart rolled away. It was there by faith I received my sight, and now I am happy all the day. But drops of grief can never repay the debt of love I owe. Here, Lord, I give myself away, 'tis all that I can do. At the cross, where I first saw the light, and the burden of my heart rolled away. It was there by faith I received my sight, and now I am happy all the day. All right, good. Let's turn to 204 now. We're going to sing Fountain of Grace. This is a nice song, good doctrine song. Newer song, though, to us. Fountain of grace at Calvary, the Son of God has died for me. Grace undeserved, so full and free. Grace has rescued me. A fountain of grace, God now provides to all who turn to Jesus Christ. Hearts cleansed by faith, then spirit filled, equal they stand at Calvary's hill. And to this fount each day I go, confessing sin he already knows, and in his grace he pardoned me. This fount of grace keeps cleansing me. A fount of grace God now provides to all who return to Jesus Christ. Hearts cleansed by faith, then spirit equal and stand at Calvary's hill. On the last verse, this fount of grace from Calvary is free to all, not just to me. So how can I this grace deny to someone else's desperate cry? A fount of grace God now provides to all who turn to Jesus Christ. Hearts cleansed by faith and spirit filled, equal and stand at Calvary's hill. Amen.
Good. I'm glad y'all did good singing that new one tonight. All right, you can set that aside. IBC kids you can head on out. I just want to work with you guys. Right. Before I forget, Miss Heidi, that folder of stuff is on that round table in my office if you need more characters. Yes. All right. Is there a new prayer bulletin back there? I thought there was. Could you get me one, Nathan? Thank you. All right. Hey, Adeline, did you get that pen? Did you throw it to me real quick? There you go. Thank you. I'll get it back to you. If I forget something, let me know. But I'm going to start off with the ones that I know of this week that I've talked to, met with, and that sort of thing. Continue to pray for Don Roberts as he heals up from his hernia surgery, and Edith as she looks after him. And I went and visited them. Went back to help her with her yard, and she'd done mowed it. So she jumped ahead of me. But they're doing okay. They're doing okay, but he forgets stuff a lot, and she's having to look after him. So you pray for her and her patience with him and that sort of thing. Went and saw yesterday. Me and the little girls did some visiting. Saw Miss Patty, and she's getting along with a walker, but she's slow about it. And Basil had taken her out and got her out for a little bit, and that was good. But we just talked a little bit, and she has trouble remembering some things. And so you pray for Miss Patty. How are they coming now to visit with her, the therapy people? Okay, good. And then pray for the daughters, right? Amen. As they are trying to look after her. And so uh, got to see her and visit with her. Went and saw Brother Mayo. He's having trouble with his foot hurting him. Thought it might be because one of the doctors had pulled him off of some medicine he'd been taking for a long time. Thought it might be that, but so he kind of did his own doctrine and went back to it, and he felt like it got some better. But when I saw him yesterday, he was hurting walking on it. Yes, might. That's a good possibility. Okay. So, yeah, so he might have gout. So pray for Brother Mayo. Miss Mayo is still not feeling really much better. And they had a time trying to get an appointment with gastrologist. They left messages, or left a message, but the message on the answer machine says, if you've left one message, don't call back. And I've heard that before on some doctors' offices, and I just think that's bad practice. That's just a bad practice. Like, don't call us, we'll call you. It's like, well, fine. I think I need to call somebody else. But anyway, so they're waiting on a call back from the gastrologist so they can get an appointment for her. Still not sure what's going on. She's not feeling good. She's got some pain. So pray for her. And then down Roanoke, I don't know otherwise. Well, she ain't going until they call her back. I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea. So then Ronnie and Linda, of course, was right there. So I went ahead and stopped at their house just to see how they're doing. They're getting along all right. And Linda, it was fun talking to her. She was telling me about having to look after her mom. They moved her mom back over in March, and it's kind of been a relief, honestly, to her because she's been looking after her so much. And she moved back over to her trailer there, next to him. My daughter's Autumn was asking. She said, I like hearing her tell stories. Because Linda was so animated, you know what I mean? When she's talking about that situation. And she said, we go back over sometime and just have her tell stories? I said, I don't know if she tells all her stories that way or not. But we had a good time. visiting with them. Let's see, what else? Your mom's at home now? Good. So that's good to hear. Yes? Got it tomorrow. Pray things. Just ask them to knock you out. Just go ahead and do it. Get it over. Just give me the gas. All right. Let me go through this prayer list, and then if there's anything we need to add, just let me know. Emily Martin, working at Timber Ridge. Emily Byer, Becky's cousin, is having surgery tomorrow. This is a 13-year-old girl that's having issues with her eye. And from what I understand, I think this girl, at one time at least, was on Adeline's basketball team. Is this the girl I'm thinking about? And so anyway, she played basketball with her, but pray for that surgery to go smoothly. Hannah Bagley, we know that she's going through a tough time. Noah Parsons, she's doing good with the retina now, my understanding is, and so that's a praise. I think we can take that part off, but she's still having some issues, so pray for her. While I'm thinking about it, Miss Giselle, her surgery's been put off, so she's going to be able to help through Vacation Bible School, but it's a shame she didn't get the surgery that she needed to get done because her doctor that was going to do the surgery had a baby early, and so was kind of unplanned. And but anyway, so you continue to pray for Miss Parsons. I'm looking at Matthew Parsons' name. Sorry, Miss Giselle. As well. Matthew, continue to pray for him. They don't know what's going on there. Continue to pray for my brother Branch, Miss Patty. We mentioned Barry Daniels, sciatic nerve. Barry Daniels. Oh, speaking of that, Joe. We don't have Joe down here, but Joe ended up getting some shots, and he said it's feeling some better. He was having trouble with his pain in his leg and hip, and he ended up getting some shots. I talked to him this past Sunday, and he's doing some better, so that's good. Shauna Roach with colon cancer, Chloe Rochester doing intense cancer treatments right now, Susan Scott with breast cancer, David Ferris, mom that's still fighting cancer, Judy Simmons, David Brown, Brenda, that's Gwen's mom, Walter Pack with stage 3 lung cancer, remember him, Jerry Hubbard, Jeremiah Clark has colon cancer, Alethea Wilt still going treatments, Lisa Dixon, that's Becky's sister, that's still fighting cancer. She's kind of right now in a healing period where they will start radiation and chemo again, I think, but she just is getting over the surgery that she just had. And then Zernie went and saw Zernie and Shelby, and she's still doing about the same as she was, just makes her tired going from one room to the other, and walking from one place to another. But every time I go, they're like, bring your guitar, and let's come sing. So we have a good time together anytime I visit with them. We have some unspoken here. Let's continue to remember these. Barbara, Ray, Mike, Ron, and John. And I know Ron didn't feel good the other day. I was talking to him about playing the guitar in the evening, and he said, brother, I don't know if I'm going to make it back. He said, I just don't feel good. And so you pray for him. And then, let's see, there's one off of here. We got several people on vacation right now. We got the Nicely family on vacation. The Browns just got back from vacation, but he's swamped with work as he just got back, wasn't able to come tonight, so you pray for them. Seems like there's somebody else out and about right now. I think Mike was, but he came back, didn't he? All right. Anybody else? Yeah, Tim Miller. Okay. The Millers. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, Laura. All right. Yes.
Heart is enlarged. They did an echocardiogram and they finally did the biopsies, but she won't know any results till Friday or Monday.
Okay.
Then I have
Okay.
it's great this Friday.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Yes. She did have cancer? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Okay. Anything else? Continue to remember Vacation Bible School that's coming up and all the preparation that goes into that. Some of you might have heard or will hear I had a tumble today and I pulled some muscles in my back, but I'm okay. All right. But if you depend on who you talk to, I broke my neck, fell out of a plane, whatever. But no, we were working on that stage up there, and I pulled some muscles in my back, but I'm okay. But you be praying for the preparation of that. We still got some things that needs to be done, tidying up. Let's call it that. We got some of the big stuff done. Now it takes a while to get all the details right. If we get all those details, that makes a big difference. Okay, so we're trying to get that done. I do have responsibilities written down and planned. If you don't know what's going on, let me ask me, and I'll tell you. Because I finally have figured all that out and solidified all that. And placed people, I think, where it's going to be the best place meant for that. And so that's exciting. We have shirts for Vacation Bible School ready for you to pick up that are on the tables in the junior church room, and they are by size. So if you will go back there and pick out your size, and so they're back there. Now, if you say, "Well, I don't have a shirt," if you didn't sign up, you might not have a shirt, okay? But I did get everybody that helped last year. I know I did get a shirt for y'all. We got probably 40 or 50 shirts. I don't remember exactly how many. But go and look. I'm pretty sure that, my regulars have definitely got one, okay? I want you to remember too, there is a special visitation for Vacation Bible School on Saturday morning. It's a big deal on Saturday morning because we're going to be taking these flyers, they're back there, Vacation Bible School flyers, out, and we're going to hit these high density areas where the kids are going to be, and we're going to get to the toys and to the bikes. You're looking out on front toys and stuff on the front porch. That's where you go, and try to get a hold of these kids and their parents. Okay, so we'll go to the apartments. We'll go to the trailer park and see if we can't get bus riders as well, of course, as just regular kids. That the moms and dads can bring them and to come to Vacation Bible School. We've had our sign out here in front of the church. We'll be putting up the other one in front of Kroger here in the next day or two, and looking forward to a big, exciting, fruitful Vacation Bible School. So that's going to be good. Yep. Who said that? Oh yeah, really? She gonna pick them up? All right. Okay. Well, that'd be great. Yeah, the van can go by. Hey, I'd love to have both vans full. Wouldn't that be good? I'll go pick them up. If y'all get them signed up, I'll get them picked up. All right. We'll find a way. Saturday morning at 10:30. I didn't say that. 10:30. There's information about camp, of course, if you need any of that at the lobby. And I think that's about it. All you need to know. Yep, that's pretty much it. We got camp coming up, and got several going to camp. That's going to be fun. Anybody got any questions about that? We got, by the way, on Wednesday night next week and Thursday night next week, we got two big inflatables coming, and they're going to be in the gym. They're actually going to be in the gym. They're going to take up basically the whole gym, but we got two of those coming. Yes, 5 to 8. 5 to 8. All right. Yes.
Facebook team. And, I can tell us, me and her, I'm sure her mother's and dad as well.
Sure.
And this was Pam. This Pam was my bus driver too, so I felt that kind of in my heart.
Yeah.
Hearing about her dying, because she was
a little bit special to me, that was you commemorating her bus for while in high school.
Certainly, certainly. Continue to pray for the Nicely family. Yep. All right. Anything else? Well, let's pray, and then we will get into the lesson tonight. Lord, thank you for giving us a beautiful day, and I pray that you'll just bless these special requests that have been mentioned tonight. I want to mention, first of all, the people that are traveling right now or on vacation. Lord, I pray that it'll be refreshing to them that are on vacation. Lord, help them to get some rest, physical rest that they need, and perhaps some mental rest from the day-to-day work that they have to do and responsibilities. Pray that the Millers be safe and the Niceleys, and just help them to have a great time with family. Pray for the Browns as they recoup from their vacation and try to catch up there at work. I pray for Miss Laura's a couple of requests. She got an unspoken request, and as well as a praise. Lord, we thank you for this praise that her dad's stone is going to be set on Friday, and I know that'll be a relief to have that done. I pray for Miss Sandra Ogle, whose heart is enlarged in that situation. I pray that you minister to her there. Pray for Miss Emily as she works at Timber Ridge, and just help everything to continue to do well, improve each week, and her to grow and be a blessing there. And I pray for Miss Emily that's looking toward cataract surgery. And Lord, I pray this cancer won't do any permanent damage, that she'll be able to heal from that, and the cataract surgery would be successful as well. Pray for Hannah Bagley, continue to minister grace to her and help her. I pray for Noel as they're trying to figure out what's going on there, and Matthew with his lung situation, pain that he's having. Pray for Branch, continue to heal him, Lord. I know he's growing and getting better each time that he does therapy, and I pray that you just continue to help him with that. Pray for Miss Patty, as I know that she's needs healing in her bones and her hips, and I pray that you'd help her and her family. I pray that you'd keep her safe. Lord, I pray that you bless Brother Barry with his pain. I pray for his son as he's going through kidney treatment and recovering from surgery. Pray for Miss Shonda Roach with colon cancer, and I pray for Chloe and fighting cancer. Susan Scott, Molly's sister. Brother David's mom that's fighting cancer as well. Judy Simmons, David Brown fighting cancer. I pray for Gwen's mom, Brenda. And then Walter Pack that's got stage 3 lung cancer. Lord, help him. Jerry Hubbard, Jeremiah Clark with colon cancer. And then Alethea Wilt that's continuing to fight cancer. I pray that you'd help her and her family. Miss Jenny Smith, and then Lisa Dixon with Becky's sister that continues to fight cancer as well. Zernie, as her numbers have been low with her kidney function and she feels weak. And I pray that you encourage her in the days ahead, as well as Edith and Dawn as they're fighting some things right now. The Mayos as they're fighting some things right now. And I know it's a frustrating thing to be physically down and not feeling well. And so I pray, Lord, that you just continue to help them. I pray that you bless tonight the little kids as they are working with Heidi. Help her to do a great job, and them to continue to learn about you and have a good time tonight in your house. I pray that you bless us, Lord, as we look into your word. And Lord, may we understand more and more how you, through the years, have brought us to this day to learn more about you and your plan in history. And I pray that you just bless our families and the days ahead. May everything that's done, vacations, Bible school wise, between now and then, get done and be well and be excellent. And may we do a great job this year reaching young people. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay. Well, that's that. Now, and so you should have 2 pieces of paper tonight. You should have a timeline, and you should have kind of a fill in the blank thing. All right. All right. I'm going to return this pen. Here you go. You got one? You might need a pen. I don't need mine now. There we go. Whew, glad you caught that. About to hit Ray in the hit. Okay. All right. Take a quick glance at the timeline for just a second. And then we're going to go to our sheet to fill out. So I've been wanting to do a study here on the kings of Israel. It's not a boring study. It's an interesting study. I'm one of those people that I like history. I love history. But I did horrible in school in history. Why? I don't know. It's just the way I think, or don't think. I guess. It's just I don't remember things really good like some people do. Names and dates and things, they just get all jumbled up. But I think it's so important that we know our history, of course, of American history, world history, and obviously our history of where God has brought the people in this world. And so I think it'd be good for us to do this study about the kings because it really helps us to understand the history of how God has brought us to the point where we're at. Let's look at the very beginning of the timeline here. These are estimates. Creation, 4000 BC, up to the flood, 2300 BC, and then the call of Abraham at 300 years after that. And then after that, about 500 years, is Exodus, when they are leaving where? Egypt. Okay, all right, hang with me here. And then they left Egypt, but they've never had a king like the other nations. And then 500 years later, they left Egypt, wandered in the wilderness, got settled, won many battles, got settled in the Promised Land. But we're 1000 BC. Israel has their first king in 1000 BC. So 1,000 years before Christ is born, they have their first king, and that's 1,000 years before they get to the King of Kings, get to know who he really is. Now then 500 years later, they have their captivity and return. They have their captivity. Why does anybody go into captivity? Why is anybody captive? Let's just say it that way. It's a one-word answer here. It's 3 letters. I should play hangman if I had board here. Sin. Yeah, it's because of sin. Anybody that's captive is because of sin, okay? Just practically thinking, if you find yourself in handcuffs, you're captive, you're most likely because of sin, okay? Most likely you've messed up, all right? If you didn't, somebody else did, okay? But anyway, if you're captive, it's because of sin. That was the case with Israel. They had been serving other gods, and so he allowed them to go into Babylonian captivity. Now then, and there's more than one captivity. We're not going to get into that right now, but we are going to talk tonight about the kings of Israel. And so this is just the introduction to it to kind of give us let's catch up to the point where we're at the beginning of the kings. And 1 Samuel is really the beginning of where we see God establishing kings in Israel. Notice we go just in order as we know the Bible does. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1 Samuel. Okay? So how did we get to the point where Israel had a king? Because you notice that was at 1000 BC, 1,000 years before Jesus is born. But it says from creation, 3,000 years later. Okay, so how did we get to the point where they started having a king? So here we are in Genesis. Genesis was written by Moses. You should fill that in. Genesis is written by Moses about, he wrote it 1500 BC. He was writing about the time period of 4004 BC. It was written about the history of man. And it establishes the record of life, mankind, marriage. Some fundamental, foundational stuff. Marriage, sin, government. All this is established in Genesis. Languages, nations, and the Israelites. God's chosen people. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and turn to Genesis 11 for a second. Just take a gander at that. All right. Genesis chapter 11. We see that God, at the Tower of Babel, he gives them different languages. And let me go to chapter 12. After the Tower of Babel, they all spread out because of their languages that he confounds them. So that we end up having many different nations all over the world, different kinds of people and races all over the world. But look at Genesis chapter 11 and look at verse 1. Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house into a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. Okay, so what's the point of the family of Abram or Abraham. God is going to bless him, make him a great family, right? What's the point of his family just from that one verse? What are they supposed to do? Don't look at me. Look at the verse, says it right there. To be a blessing. That's right. To be a blessing. And so the whole point of God choosing out a chosen people, he was to bless them so that they could bless others, right? So look, how are they going to do that? Look at verse 3. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curseth thee. And in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. So the reason why God chose a group of people is he said, I'm going to focus on these people. I'm going to bless them so much that everybody in the world is going to see what it's like to be loved by God, what it's like to be cared for by God, provided for by God. And the rest of the world, because of their example, will want to have that same relationship with me. And so it's a beautiful picture of God's chosen people. By the way, God's chosen people, the nation of Israel, is not his only chosen people. Who else did God choose?
The disciples.
Okay, God chose. Jesus chose disciples. That's true. That's true. Everybody that does what? All right. God chooses everybody that chooses him. Thereafter, from the nation of Israel, from that point on, that's why when we talk about the free will of man, that's what we're talking about. God's predestined the plan that if anybody would choose him, he will make them a part of the family. You see, this is the family of the Israelites, the family of the Jewish family. And so after this, he chooses anybody that chooses him. Anyway, got to move on. Exodus, all right, written by Moses. It speaks about the deliverance. Okay, I'm going to continue to move. You should too. Genesis, after Genesis, go to Exodus chapter 3. Exodus chapter 3. So, there's a great famine in the land. We know that story. Joseph, coat of many colors and that sort of thing. He gets sold into Egypt. God's part of God's plan to get the whole family, the whole nation down in Egypt. He took care of everybody, saved the nation of Egypt by being down there, being Pharaoh's right-hand man. And he went through some difficult times, but it was because God had a plan. God's sovereignty used him in that area. So Exodus chapter 3, verse 8, we see here that it's time now. They've spent some time down in Egypt, and they're being oppressed now. That one Pharaoh passed on, another Pharaoh came on the scene. The Israelites are not being treated well, and so it's time to get them out of Egypt. Chapter 3, verse 8 says, "And I can't come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land unto a good land, and a large unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites." Okay? So God is planning to pull them out now out of Egypt. That's why we have the book of Exodus. So Genesis is the book of beginnings. It's the beginnings of everything foundational, beginnings of mankind, beginnings of the nation of Israel. Exodus is pulling them out of the world. Okay? Pulling them out of Egypt. They're supposed to be a separated group unto God, right? And we find also in Exodus how not only is God delivering them out of Egypt, but he begins some things, some new things. And one of the new things that he begins is this ceremony, if you will, that began at Passover. Look at chapter 12 of Exodus. Chapter 12 of Exodus. He begins in the very end of all the plagues of Egypt. He tells them that there is going to be a final plague on all of Egypt, and the firstborn of every home is going to die unless the blood is applied to their doorpost and lintel. And so they took hyssop and they brushed the blood on each side of the doorpost and at the lintel. And in that night, God passed through, and all the firstborn of everyone passed away. But if the blood was applied, then nobody passed away of that family. Nobody died of that family. And this is called the Passover. He says, "I will pass over you." And we sing that song, "When I see the blood, I will pass over you." And that's the point of the gospel. It's a beautiful picture of the gospel. Matter of fact, I mean, if you just take the lintel and doorpost, you see a cross right there. And when the blood's applied, he passes over us because the Christ's blood is applied for us and for our sin. And so I had you turn there. Did I read anything? No. Chapter 12, verse 12. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn of the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt will I execute judgment. I am the Lord. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. So God passes, he begins that. By the way, that's their continue. The Israelites, the Jewish people, they continue to observe that from then on, the Passover. By the way, me and my family, we observe the Passover in a Christian life every year. Some years we do it better than other years, but we try to do it every year just to teach our kids what it's all about, what God did, and how the blood of Christ delivers us from sin and death and hell. And so that's a good thing to do. Now, this week, my wife was telling me, have y'all heard of PragerU? Have you ever heard of PragerU, anybody? Okay. And PragerU, I don't agree with everything that he does and says, okay, but he is very patriotic and about the foundations of America, and I like that. Teaching some classes and that sort of thing. There's some really good things that guy is doing. But he mentioned the other day on one of the videos is that they're starting a ritual, a ceremony. There's another word I'm looking for. Maybe it's called ritual. But where you take certain symbolic things as an American and you walk your children through a little ceremony and to teach about the history of America. And one of the things is they had some sweet tea on the table. And they said, everybody lift your glass of sweet tea. And he said, let's remember the Boston Tea Party. Everybody take a sip. And they took a sip, and that, America, the rebels, Anyway, so then he put the tea down and he said, all right, take the pretzel. And they took a pretzel, it was salty. He said the salt from the pretzel should remind you of the salty tears of all those that died for our freedom, that had to fight in the battles and for our freedom here. And so you take a bite of the pretzel. And then he had strawberries and Cool Whip and blueberries, red, white, and blue. And he said, now you dip your strawberry and your blueberries in that Cool Whip and you eat that and just be reminded about the red, white, and blue. And they tell what the red, white, and blue represents and about how sweet it is to live in this country. Where there's freedom, how wonderful it is to have freedom. And then they had another one, they had a little bell. Everybody had a bell on the table, and they rung that bell. And he talked about the Liberty Bell. And this is a ceremony and ritual that they're starting, and you'll probably see more about it. And I don't think it's a bad ceremony at all. Why do we do communion? Same reasons, okay? Why? Because if you continue to do those things and teach your kids those things, they'll remember them. They'll remember the meaning behind them, and it's good history. It's good history, and it teaches them what has happened in the past. And he said the Jewish nation has existed and survived as long as they have for one reason, because of the rituals that they do. They teach their kids where they came from. That's good, and that's right. America ought to continue to teach their kids where they come from, right? And so, anyway, it's a good thing. And God established the first ritual here with the Passover, and it wasn't for the point of a ritual, but from there on, they were to do that. The point was to have this plague in Egypt and for him to pass over and see the deliverance that God showed to them because of the application of the blood. And of course, all that points to the gospel. It's a picture of the gospel and what Jesus did. And so that's Exodus. And then at the end, toward the end here, we see the law, is given at Mount Sinai, and the tabernacle is set up. The tabernacle is set up. And they make all kinds of plans for the tabernacle. And they gather all kinds of materials and give instructions of how things should be. In Leviticus, we see what relates to, the word Leviticus means what relates to Levi. What relates to Levi, because obviously it's Leviticus. And let me turn there. We're in Exodus. Let's turn to Leviticus. Chapter 1. Exodus, Leviticus. All right. Chapter 111. Verse 11, excuse me. What relates to Levi is what this book's about. And it says, and he shall kill it. He's talking about the offering, talking about the process of offering and worship. He shall kill it on the side of the altar northward before the Lord, and the priests, Aaron's sons, shall sprinkle his blood round about the altar. And so he speaks of who is supposed to do this. Aaron was from the tribe of Levi, his sons. They are all to be having the job and responsibility of conducting this mode of worship. Number 2 says how to serve God. The whole book of Leviticus is how to serve God in worship. So you got serve and worship there in those blanks. So with Genesis, we have the foundation of things and the beginning of God's chosen people, Israel. Exodus, bringing them out of the world and separated unto Him. And then Leviticus, okay, now that we're separated, now that we're out of the world and we're separated, how do we worship God right? How do we serve God right? Here's some things, and here's a group of people that are going to handle that. And then we get to Numbers. And Moses, I think it's, let me look and see if I've got this right. Number 3. Oh, the key word is holiness, mentioned 87 times. 87 times. Leviticus, they were to be holy. Everything. You read through Leviticus, you see how particular God is. He wants things just so. Let me ask you a question. When somebody builds your house, do you want them to be particular? Yeah, you do. Okay. Else you end up with crooked stuff, right? And things that don't work. And God was particular. And He wanted things just so. He wanted them holy. In other words, separate from error, but separated to perfection as much as possible. Purity, sinlessness. Okay. So, then in the book of Numbers, is the book of journeyings. The book of journeyings. So the tabernacle, remember, was portable. It was like a big tent. Big tent. Really nice big tent. Okay, but it was portable. They could move and go places with it. And then so they're supposed to be here. Exodus is them leaving Egypt. Where did they go? They went into the wilderness, right? And so Numbers is about the book of journeyings and them wandering in the wilderness, and in particular for 40 years because of unbelief. Because of unbelief. It says in chapter 14, in verse 1 and 2, it says, in all the congregation. Oh, I should go down to chapter 13. Remember when they got to the edge of the land of Canaan, they could have crossed into it. They could have went to battle right then. But in verse 30 it says, Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, hey, let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it. They were ready to go. But the men that were with him said, we be not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And they brought up an evil report of the land. Look at verse 1 of chapter 14. And all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried. The people wept that night. And the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron and the whole congregation, saying to them, would God we had died in the land of Egypt, or would God we had died in this wilderness? Look what you've done. You have brought us now to die at the hand of our enemies. And so this is why they wandered. They were unbelieving. They had no faith. That whole generation died off except for 2 people. Who were the people? Joshua and Caleb. They got to go in. But that rest of that congregation, that generation, died off because of their unbelief. They never got to see it. All right. Now, after Numbers, we have the Deuteronomy, a review here of the first 4 and kind of an application of it. And these first 5 books are called the Pentateuch. The Pentateuch. Penta, 5. Took, That's a bunch. I don't know. What is took? Anybody know? I didn't even look that up.
Okay.
Huh?
You okay?
Took. I'll have to check that out. I forgot to look at it. Pentateuch. So that's the first 5 books. Then we get to Joshua. Okay. Now notice, just in the first 5 books, how far did it get us? Man, we've gotten all the way from 4000 BC to 1500 BC at least. Okay? Yeah, it is 1500 BC. So we've gone that far all the way, if you look at your timeline, quite a ways. Okay? Now we get to Joshua. Now, Moses wasn't allowed to take Israel over because Moses struck the rock how many times? Twice. Okay. The first time he struck it once. And there's a reason why. Does anybody know what the rock represents? It represents Christ and him being struck once. Yep. And then and that's funny. Who beat? Okay. And so that first rock that he hit to bring water out, it was Christ. The living water is what he brings, okay? And is he to be beaten? Yeah, once, right? But he was never intended to be beaten twice. He died for us only one time. And in the second instruction from God to Moses, he said, speak to the rock, didn't he? But Moses was angry. You ever do something you ain't supposed to do when you're angry? Don't have to admit it. I just think about it in your head, okay? But yes. And Moses, even though God said speak to the rock, Moses went out there and he got frustrated with the Israel and he started, you big gossiping, whiny babies, I'm tired of hearing you. Do I have to provide for you every time you need something? He took that stick and he hit the rock. Nothing happened. Now everybody's staring at him like, all right, big boy, now what are you going to do? So he hit it again, and he sealed his fate right then. Now water did come out, and God provided. But God said, you'll not enter into the promised land because you disobeyed me. Jesus is not to be hit twice, only once. So, anyway, he didn't get to go in. So, somebody come after him, and that's Joshua, to be the next leader. Turn to Joshua chapter 1. Joshua chapter 1, as we continue to follow, go through Deuteronomy there and go to Joshua chapter 1. Key verse 8 and 9 to me, key verses. He tells them, hey, everywhere you put your feet at, I mean, it's going to be your land, Joshua. I'm promising it to you now. You just keep trusting me. And everywhere you put your feet, it's going to be your land. Look at verse 8. This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. Listen to that. That's the only time in the Bible the word success is mentioned. Only time. I think to myself sometimes. I hear lots of bad stories. People telling me about how awful some of their livelihood is, and I see things that are going wrong, and a lot of it has to do with sin. Sometimes it has to do with just plain old sin. And I think to myself, if we would just do what the book says, and he says it right there, if you don't let the book of the law depart out of your mouth, if you meditate therein day and night, and observe to do it according to all that's written therein, then shalt thou make thy way prosperous. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect. I'm not saying you're never going to have a hard time, hard day, or difficult things happen. But all in all, at the end of the day, at the end of your life, you ought to be able to look back and see, because God was good and promised to give you this, you'll have good success by following. It's pretty simple. Verse 9. And then he says this, not just do you do this, but don't quit. Be strong and courageous. He says, have not I commanded thee, be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest. And so he gives the instruction to Joshua that's supposed to lead this nation after Moses' leadership. And so the blank there, number 1, is battle. They follow Joshua and Israel this book follows Joshua and Israel into the promised land in battle. They defeat city after city, king after king. By the way, So far, we don't have any kings. Who's the king here? Who's the captain? God is. Moses was just a servant, just listening to God. Joshua was just a servant, listening to God. No kings so far. And guess what? They're doing good. God's bringing them out. God's took care of them. God brought them through the famine. God brought them through the last plague and all the plagues of Egypt. God brought them through the wilderness. Brought them through the battles and into the promised land. God's going to take care of them. Then we have the book of Judges. The Judges cover about 200 years of Israel's history. So now they've gotten into the land and they're getting settled down. The enemy is still out there, but they have conquered the land. And they are settling down and establishing themselves as a nation. For about 200 years, God uses judges in the land. God used 12 judges to rule the people. Not a king, but a judge. I was just listening to a man preaching today about Samson. Samson was a judge. You wouldn't want Samson to be a king. I mean, you wouldn't. I mean, Samson was horrible, ethically, okay, morally. He was not a good person. But did God, what was he good at? Killing people. That's what he was good at. He was a judge. He was good at killing Philistines. All right? And God uses men like that to help Israel. All right? Notice, go ahead and turn with me to Judges chapter 21. We'll see this with our own eyes. And I'm doing good on time. I'm going to finish on time. Here we go. Joshua chapter 21. Look at verse 25. It says, that ain't right. Oh, that's Joshua. Sorry. Get the Judges, Luke. Verse 25. Sad verse, and wraps up Judges. It says, in those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. So, your blank there is own eyes. Now, what's wrong with this statement? I mean, there's no king. It makes it sound like there should be a king, right? Makes it sound like, when you read that there should have been somebody to kind of govern them and say, hey, y'all need to do this, and you need to do this, and you need to do this. But instead, they were doing what was right in their own eyes. So, what's wrong with that? If God didn't intend for them to actually have a king up to this point, what should they have been doing? Letting God be king, right? Let God be king and obey Him. Do we have a king in America? No. Okay? We ought to let God be king of us. If you'll continue to do that, by the way, God will keep blessing America. God will bless Israel. If Israel keep God as king, God will keep blessing Israel. If America would do the same thing, God will keep blessing America. Now, there's more to it, but let's move on. God used 12 judges, and they did what was right in their own eyes. Now, we have the book of Ruth. What a wonderful book. One of these days, I'm going to teach on the book of Ruth and teach on the book of Esther. You know what's interesting? I was thinking about this. Do we have any books that are designated just to a king? Like, do we have the book of David? Well, we got Psalms, but they're not the book of David. Notice that? We got some books that are designated to prophets. We got books that are designated to certain elements of what happened, like Exodus, right? We got books that are named after those folks. We got, prophets. You know what's interesting is we have a book from Ruth. And we got a book from Esther. A queen, but no king. And so some of the most prominent positions that you would of Israel, but yet we don't have a book from them. Got books within the books. We have stories about them and what they did in their life. Maybe because it's not about the men; it's about the God of the men. And tucked in between Judges and 1 Samuel, we have the book of Ruth. And I don't know what you've learned or studied about this book, but this is actually a beautiful book of the redemption and God's grace. redemption and God's grace. And number 2 in your blank there, it's a prophetic picture of the gospel. Boaz is the kinsman redeemer. I believe the whole book is about getting us to Boaz. The whole book, as you go from Ruth and Naomi, it's getting us to Boaz if we can. He's the kinsman redeemer. He's the type of Christ, okay? And Ruth is who we identify with. We identify with. Did Ruth belong to Boaz's family? No. Not until she married into it, right? She didn't belong to it. She was chosen by him and accepted in by him. And of course, Naomi pointed her to the right direction. But Ruth didn't belong to that family. Actually, she followed Naomi down to that family, right? And he was the kinsman redeemer. And so that's a beautiful picture of the gospel and redemption. And you'll see that throughout the whole Old Testament. The Bible's all about redemption. Then 1 Samuel, we finally get to 1 Samuel, and that's where we're going to stop tonight after the book of Ruth. We're closing up some really, I guess we're beginning actually some really dark days of Israel's history, covering 115 years. Some really dark days here in the book of 1 Samuel, 115 years. And this records, the record here is from Samuel, which is going to be being a son of Hannah and taught by Eli the priest. It's going to be from Samuel all the way to David. Inside of this book, we will see the first king of Israel come about. So I give you a little about the world's history here, about the history of God's people before we get to the king, to see where these stories, come from, and what Israel went through, what the world went through, and as God is leading everybody up to that point. Now, this is what I like to do, and this is something for you to do and think about this week, okay? You take this timeline of events and you take away some of the things that happened in your little outline here from Genesis to 1 Samuel. And think about how God is teaching us and leading us to the point when Christ is going to come. How did God take mankind from the Garden of Eden, and what did he teach him over the years until Christ came? And I think it's really neat to think about that. I want you to think about that this week a little bit. And next week, let's talk about that. God chose steps. You see, I laid it out there so you'd see kind of like the steps of history. And what was it that God was teaching mankind before we got to the point where Christ came, God's Son? And all the way you'll see redemption of God and pointing to that day coming. All right, anybody not get a blank? I will fill it in. Yes, David? To David. King David. Passover. I probably didn't say that. Yep, go ahead.
Leviticus number 1.
Means what relates to Levi. Yep. In other words, Leviticus is all about what the tribe of Levi's job is supposed to do. How they're supposed to worship, serve, how to serve God and worship. Anybody? Anything else? All right. Well, thank you for hanging with me there, okay? We're going to get into now 1 Samuel next week. We're going to begin actually talking about the first king, okay? And here's a question. Did God want Israel to have a king? Didn't. But he did choose one for them. He didn't want them to have it, but he chose one for them. It's like I don't ever want my daughters getting married, but I guess I'll help them choose one, right? I guess I do want them to get married, but I don't want them to leave the house, I love them. And about 30, about 35, something like that. I guess I'll let them go. I'm just kidding. All right. Well, let's pray. We'll close it up. Okay. Mitch.